It's a question I think a lot of people have asked who were guitar greats or loved guitar greats. What would have happened if Domenic Troiano had lived? I'm John Beaudin from Rock History Canada. Keep in mind, if you want to hear the entire interview, there'll be links in the description of this video. Also, this whole interview is based on a book, Domenic Troiano, His Life and Music. Where do you think he'd be now? What would he be doing? I know that's a larger than life question, but both of you, what do you think he'd be doing?
Well, he became totally dedicated to the studio in the mid 80s, and he had that really big break doing film and TV scoring. It made him a lot of money, and he built a beautiful studio, and then he had his own label, Black Market Records. And I think he would have eventually had he had 4 or 5 different artists that were close to success, but none of them really they had a bit of success, but nothing major. But I think he would have, between doing making money from the TV and movie work, it would have given him the money to invest in further artists. He probably would have had a David Foster, I don't want to say a level of David Foster success, but maybe something approaching it, where he would have somebody, one of the artists that he did find would have become hopefully a household name, and he would have carried on because he had the drive and the money and of course the talent and everything else, all that part of it, that he would have clicked eventually. But as he got ill, that all went to the wayside, and it all, everything unfolded. But I think he would have, he may have, I don't know, he would have played here and there, I think, but only for, not as a career, just for his own pleasure.
I think that Donnie would have been dedicated to his musical craft until he couldn't, until maybe not till the day he died, but until he simply couldn't do it. I think he would have been mentoring other musicians. He would have been paying it forward. There's no question. He was doing that in the last 5 years of his life anyway. He would have played. He would have continued to be involved. He would have continued to make music. I think it would have been almost impossible for that not to be the case. He was so dedicated to his musical craft, and I don't think that would have stopped in any way, shape, or form. Would have slowed down a bit, like we all slow down. But there would have been something. He would have had there'd be something that wouldn't have got done. There would have been a project, there would have been something that he would have been working on, and he would have been so focused on it and dedicated to it and committed. Music was his life, music was his muse, music was his reason for being.
Oh, Elliot Randall, some really nice words from him, reeling in the years, tipping his hat to Domenic. Who had to turn down Steely Dan. But see, that's another thing right there. There's another example of people, tipping their hat, but also being classy about it. Not forgetting where you came from, where you learned some of your tricks.
Yeah, I was Eric Mercury, who you may know, a Toronto performer, back right from the 60s on, early 60s. He's a soul R&B singer, and he had the Soul Searchers. He had many different bands. Anyhow, he was signed to a record label, and he went to New York to record an album called Electric Black Man. And the Gary Katz was the producer, the Steely Dan producer. So this is before Steely Dan, and they had Gary reached out to Elliot Randall to be the music director and create a backup band for him. So later on, Gary came to Toronto to visit Eric, and he met my brother, and he saw the Mandala, and it made a huge impact on him. And then when later on, when they were touring the album, the Electric Black Man album, they played in Whiskey A Go Go. Elliot Randall was there. Well, you've read the story, but Elliot Randall came along, as part of the band. And they, all of the Bush, my brother's band Bush, came to see them on the first night. they became fast friends. And my brother showed him. He took him to Neil Moser to rewire his guitar, and that's the same guitar he used on that solo, the Steely Dan, Reeling in the Years. I mean, there's a lot of my brother touched the lives, and many people touched his life too. I don't want to put him on a pedestal, but he connected people. He wasn't hiding secrets. He shared. He loved to share. Later on, when he became successful in the James Gang, he shared with everybody, all his friends, with myself. He flew me down to New York. He was very generous, almost to a fault. And he would lend money to people that were down and out. Some of the roadies that had left they weren't good enough to be in the James Gang or the Guess Who. He would give them money behind the scenes to help them, and just things like that. He didn't even hesitate. Anyhow, that my point on Elliot Randall. He's a great guy. I had several discussions with him. He lives in London, England, and he was so nice. This is really early in the process. Eric gave me his email address and we connected, and you saw what he wrote. But it's really nice stuff, very heartfelt.
I like the put a little butter on it, put that guitar in the oven. Mike Levine, that's guitar player coming up. Can you reiterate that story? That's just like one of those, Domenic, you got it.
I think that Donnie was obviously having them on a little bit. These young kids, where they were almost the next generation. It was really only half a generation apart, but almost the next generation of budding rock and roll guitar players. So they wanted to somehow duplicate that sound. How do you do that? Because let's face it, it was a pretty unique sound. It was amazing. And so Donnie, of course, he had a sense of humor, and he'd just call them over and he'd open the guitar case and he'd show them and he'd say, we take this and we put butter on it, and then we put it in the oven and we heat it up to 350 degrees and you leave it there for 20 minutes. And then and I mean, so these guys, they had the butter out before they realized that Donnie was just having fun with them at that point in time. But no, it's a great story. But I mean, it kind of speaks to the level of awe and amazement that these musicians had for Donnie. He just and the other part of it was, as much as he was having them on, he was generally pretty generous with his time. He was always willing to encourage them, and he talked to Alex Lifeson about how to practice and to keep it up with for a 13-year-old. Bernie Labarge, another Toronto guitarist who did a lot of work with a lot of musicians, most notably the Dexters at the Orbit Room. Donnie was just such an encouragement to him, to the point where Bernie shared with me that Donnie said to him at one point, he says, "Bernie, I'm not sure that you really appreciate how good you really are." And and that just I mean, what a thing for your idol to tell you that. But he had been so attentive and so dedicated to his craft, trying to learn so much from Donnie. And Donnie said, "You've got it." And to get that kind of validation, but see, Donnie was tough. Donnie's standards were high, but he still worked very hard to have a positive influence in however way he could. Even if he fired you, he wanted you to feel good about yourself. And we've got stories of people that didn't cut it, and Donnie would get together and say, this isn't going to work. But by the time the conversation was over, the guy was fired, but he didn't feel bad at all. He still felt like he was part of the group. He still felt that Donnie had given him something useful that he could use and go forward with.
Let's not forget, John, one other point about that. Let's not forget Robbie Robertson.
Yes.
Robbie was the originator of those stories. He would tell people, kept asking him, "How do you get that sound?" And he said to people, I slit the speaker cone in my amp. And then the younger guitarists started doing that, and they realized that they just wasted $50. And then the other thing, I think he also mentioned something about baking the guitar. I'm not sure exactly. I can't quote him, but he was a real character too. He liked to pull your leg. And you saw his quote in our book. It was just such a wonderful quote. And Robbie, I sent out a request, or at least an email, to his personal assistant, legalist, I guess like an administrative assistant. And that guy gave it to Robbie on a Thursday morning. And on Thursday afternoon, I had the quote. You know, unbelievable. I didn't know what to expect from Robbie. And he was so generous doing that. And it was a powerful quote. So I just want to tip my hat to Robbie.
The brand new book is by Mark Doble and Domenic Troiano's brother, Frank. Mark was actually a good friend of Dominic's. There'll be links in the description if you want to pick up the book. If you want to see the entire interview, there'll be links in the description as well. We'll have more from the pair in just a few days. Make sure you comment on our videos. Share our videos on social media. That's the biggest thing that helps us. Share, share, share. I'm John Beaudin from Rock History Canada. Take care of yourself.